Give me a note. Just give me a D. You know what a D is? Between the two blacks. Jñānīs lo premadana kaduna prachur premadana kaduna prachur Heno Prabhu kota gela chaya thakur Kaha mora swarup rupa kaha sanatan Kaha dasa raghunata patita pavan Kaha mora bhatta juga kaha kaviraj Eka kale kota gela goranataraj Pashane kuti bo mata annale pashibo Mata nale pashibo Goranga gunera nidhi kota gele pabo Se sabba sangira sange je koi lo bila Se sangana paya kande narotamadas Jñānīs lo premadana kaduna prachur Heno Prabhu kota gela chaya thakur Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur, Jaya Vaishnav Thakur. He who brought the treasure of divine love and who was filled with compassion and mercy. Where has such a personality as Srinivasa Acharya gone? Where are my Sarup Damodar and Rupa Goswami? Where is Sanatan? Where is Raghunath Das, the savior of the fallen? Where are my Raghunath Bhatta and Gopal Bhatta? And where is Krishna Das Kaviraj? Where did Lord Gauranga, the great dancer, suddenly go? I will smash my head against a rock and enter into fire. Where will I find Lord Gauranga, the reservoir of all wonderful qualities? Being unable to obtain the association of Lord Gauranga, accompanied by all of these devotees in whose association he performed his pastimes, Narottam Das simply weeps. So, before we begin the Bhagavatam, we'll read from the Samadhi's book about Lokanath Goswami. It's kind of a bit much to do the Guru Puja song and also get ready for class, so you'll have to forgive me a slight delay here. Okay. 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 On this 10th day of July, 2023 in San Diego, we're reading about Sri Lokanath Goswami, whose disappearance day it is today on July 10th. A personal associate of Lord Gauranga, fully absorbed in pure love of Krishna, Sri Lokanath Goswami was the eldest of the Goswamis living in Brajabhumi. He shunned name and fame, so much so that he asked Krishnadas Kaviraj to keep his name out of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think he's mentioned just in passing. His body and mind were completely attached to Vrindavan Dham. The divine leelas of Radha Vinod played in his heart. His ears existed only to hear Srimad Bhagavatam. Quote, anyone who reads the Srimad Bhagavatam, said Lokanath Goswami, he is my friend. Once Sri Krishna himself appeared and gave Lokanath a deity of Radha Vinod. Lokanath Goswami carried his deity all over Braja in a cloth bag hung around his neck. Although reluctant to accept disciples, Lokanath Goswami finally initiated Narottam Das as his only disciple. He appreciated his genuine humility and determination to serve. Every night for a whole year, Narottam Das secretly served his guru by carefully cleaning the field where Lokanath Goswami had passed stool. Lokanath Goswami's original deities of Radha Vinod, sorry, it's a bit much for my poor voice to do the Sunday night kirtan and the Gurvashtaka in the morning and give class tonight. Hare Krishna. Lokanath Goswami's original deities of Radha Vinod are now worshipped in Jaipur, Rajasthan. A Pratibhu-murti, expanded form of the original deity of Radha Vinod, adorns the altar at the Radha Gokulananda temple in Vrindavan. The Samadhi of Lokanath Goswami is the largest one in the temple courtyard. He serves Srimati Radharani as Manju, I think Radha Damodar. Yeah. Of course, there's the Samadhi tombs of Rupa and Sanatans there too, I think. Yeah, those are the biggest. He serves Srimati Radharani as Manjuali Manjari in Nitya Vrindavan Leela. And then there's a nice verse about him. Srimad Radha Vinodaika Seva Sampat Samanvitam Padmanabh Atmajam Shrimal Lokanatha Prabhu Bhaje. This is written by Narottam Das Thakur, who was his only disciple. I worship the lotus feet of Sri Lokanath Goswami Prabhu, the son of Sri Padmanabha. He is a storehouse of single-minded service to the lotus feet of Sri Sri Radha Vinod. Sri Lokanath Goswami Ki Jai. And now we proceed to the Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, a reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in Canto 6, Prescribed Duties for Mankind, Chapter 16, King Chitraketu Beats the Supreme Lord, text number 34. Now, just one word of warning on these verses. As I mentioned, they're all irregular and kind of difficult to chant. So we'll do our best. You remember a few verses back, it said that he's having trouble because he's in ecstasy to pick out the syllables. So I think this is part of what that's about. Okay. Chitraketu Ruvacha Ajita Jitaha Sama Matibihi Sadubhir Bhavan Jitatmabir Bhavata Vijitas Te Api Chabhajatam Akamatmanam Ya Atmado Atikarunaha Chittaketuravacha Ajitadichak Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitapabhir Bhavata Vijitas Te Pichabhajatam Akamatmanamya Apado Tikadunaha. Okay. Chitraketuravacha Ajitaditak Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitapabhir Bhavata Vijitas Te Pichabhajatam Akamatmanamya Apado Tikadunaha. Chitraketuravacha Ajitaditak Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitapabhir Bhavata Vijitas Te Pichabhajatam Akamatmanamya Apado Tikadunaha. Please chant. Chitraketuravacha Ajita Jitak Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitapabhir Bhavata Vijitas Te Pichabhajatam Akamatmanamya Apado Tikadunaha. Anyone else want to try? Turavacha Ajita Jitak Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitapabhir Bhavata Vijitas Te Pichabhajatam Akamatmanamya Apado Tikadunaha. Chitraketuravacha Ajitajitas Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitapabhir Bhavata Vijitas Te Pichabhajatam Akamatmanamya Apado Tikadunaha. You can do it, no? Ajitajitak Samamatibi Sadhubhir Bhavan Jitapabhir Bhavata Vijitas Te Pichabhajatam Akamatmanamya Apado Tikadunaha. Ladies? No. Okay. I'm going to read the word by words. Chitraketu Uvacha. King Chitraketu said, Ajita, O my unconquerable Lord, Jitaha, conquered, Samamatibihi, by persons who have conquered the mind, Sadhubihi, the devotees, Bhavan, your lordship. Jita Apibihi, who have completely controlled the senses. Bhavata, by you. Vijitaha, conquered. Te, they. Api, also. Cha, and. Bhajatam, to those who always engage in your service. Akama Atmanam, with no motives for material profit. Yaha, who? Atmadaha, giving yourself. Atikarunaha, extremely merciful. Translation. Chitraketu said, O unconquerable Lord, although you cannot be conquered by anyone, you are certainly conquered by devotees who have control of the mind and senses. They can keep you under their control because you are causelessly merciful to devotees who desire no material profit from you. Indeed, you give yourself to them, and because of this, you also have full control over your devotees. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord and the devotees both conquer. The Lord is conquered by the devotees, and the devotees are conquered by the Lord. Because of being conquered by one another, they both derive transcendental bliss from their relationship. The highest perfection of this mutual conquering is exhibited by Krishna and the gopīs. The gopīs conquered Krishna, and Krishna conquered the gopīs. Thus, whenever Krishna played his flute, he conquered the minds of the gopīs, and without seeing the gopīs, Krishna could not be happy. Other transcendentalists, such as jñānīs and yogīs, cannot conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Only pure devotees can conquer him. Pure devotees are described as samamati, which means that they never deviate from devotional service under any circumstances. It is not that devotees worship the Supreme Lord only when happy. They worship him even when in distress. Happiness and distress do not hamper the process of devotional service. Therefore, Srimad Bhagavatam says that devotional service is ahaituki apratayata, unmotivated and uninterrupted. When a devotee offers devotional service to the Lord without any motive, annabhilashita shunyam, his service cannot be hampered by any material condition, apratayata. Thus, a devotee who offers service in all conditions of life can conquer the Supreme Personality of Godhead. A special distinction between devotees and the other transcendentalists, namely the jñānīs and yogīs, is that jñānīs and yogīs artificially try to become one with the Supreme, whereas devotees never aspire for such an impossible accomplishment. Devotees know that their position is to be eternally servants of the Supreme Lord and never to be one with him. Therefore, they are called samamati or jitatma. They detest oneness with the Supreme. They have no lusty desires for oneness. Instead, their desire is to be freed from all mental hankering. Therefore, they are called nishkama, desireless. A living entity cannot exist without desires, but desires that can never be fulfilled are called kama, lusty desires. Kamaistaista ritigana. Because of lusty desires, non-devotees are deprived of their intelligence. Thus, they are unable to conquer the Supreme Lord. Whereas devotees, being freed from such unreasonable desires, can conquer the Lord. Such devotees are also conquered by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Because they are pure, being free from all material desires, they fully surrender to the Supreme Lord, and therefore the Lord conquers them. Such devotees never aspire for liberation. They simply desire to serve the lotus feet of the Lord. Because they serve the Lord without desires for remuneration, they can conquer the mercy of the Lord. The Lord is by nature very merciful, and when he sees that his servant is working without desires for material profit, naturally he is conquered. Devotees are always engaged in service. Savaimana Krishna Badada Vindayo Vachangsi Vaikunta Gunanuvarnade. Okay, who is this describing? Who knows? You remember? The king. Ambarish. This is King Ambarish, yeah. All the activities of their senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. Because of such devotion, the Lord gives himself to his devotees as if they could use him for any purpose they might desire. Of course, the devotees have no purpose other than to serve. When a devotee fully surrenders and has no aspiration for material profit, the Lord certainly gives him all opportunities for service. This is the position of the Lord when conquered by his devotees. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Shri Parampara. So, when I was reading this, immediately two verses came to mind, and I'd like to just cite those in relation. This one of them is very, very famous. They're both famous, actually. Okay, so I put it on this other thing. If you give me a second here. Okay. So the first one is the prayer in the prayers of Brahma. In the third prayer, after the Brahma Vimohan Lila, this is chapter 14 of the 10th canto. And all know the story that Brahma was a little puzzled how this little boy, playing with his friends and herding the cows and carrying a little fruit and yogurt in his hand was the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the source of his birth as Garbhodaksha Vishnu. So that's called Brahma Vimohan Lila. He's a little bewildered. So he stole the calves and boys, and Krishna expanded himself into identical cows and boys, and then for a whole year he just played normally. They didn't say anything about the killing of Aghasura at home. So that was puzzling to Maharaj Pariksit. And you know the story. So finally Brahma came back after a moment of his time. It was a year here. And they were still playing with the boys and calves. And Brahma became even more bewildered because I thought I put him in the cave. And so he found the boys under his mystic power. So then Krishna revealed himself. They all turned into Vishnu forms, and everything was worshipping them. So then finally he realized, yes, he may be in this form a little boy, but he is my master. And so he gets down from his swan and he offers Dandavat pranams, and then he offers these prayers in chapter 14. And they're very conclusive. There's a lot of commentary. If you read that chapter in the Krishna book, you'll see it's quite long compared to other chapters because Prabhupada is quoting a lot of the commentary. And the third verse is very famous. Third prayer is very famous because in the discussion between Ramananda Roy and Lord Chaitanya in chapter 8 of the Madhya Lila, Lord Chaitanya takes the role of the student, and he addresses Ramananda Roy as the guru. He was reluctant to do that, right? To take the role. Here he is not even a sannyasi. He's a householder, manager of but Lord Chaitanya encouraged him with that verse, Kiba Vipa Nyase Shudra Kene no Ye Krishna Tattva Vete Se Guru Hoy. Whether it's sannyasi or a Shudra or a Brahmin, if you know the science of bhakti, you can become a guru. If you can know it, thoroughly like Brahmananda Roy did. So then there are a series of questions by Lord Chaitanya. What's the means to achieve the ultimate goal of life? So he started out describing Varnashram. There's a verse. What is that? I forget my verses. What is that? Yeah, Varnashram Achavada Purushena Parakna Vishnu Arajade Pantananya Tatushikaranam. Thank you. So this describes how if you nicely practice Varnashram, and of course worshiping Krishna through Varnashram, then this is the only way to satisfy Vishnu. This is very important. The Lord said, that's okay, but it's external. And then he kept going external, even up to the point of Sarva Dharma Parityajya was external. You can go further, you can go further. He wasn't rejecting them. He said, it's good, but you can do better, because he wants to come up to the highest. So when he gets to this verse, he said, that's very good. This verse, this prayer by Brahma, number 3. So here's the prayer. You probably have heard it before. Gyane piyasanudapasya namantaheva jivanti sanmukhaditam bhavadiya vartam stane stita shuddhikatam tanuvan manobhir ye prayaso ajitadito besitais trilokyam. You see the relevance there? It's exactly the same conclusion here. You can conquer the unconquerable Lord. So this verse gives important instructions. Those who, even while remaining situated in their established social positions, you don't have, it's dhanistita, don't do anything radical, but add this. They remain in their social positions. They throw away the process of speculative knowledge, cast it udapasya, gane piyasam udapasya, great effort. Throw away the process of speculative knowledge, and with their body, words, and mind, offer all respects to descriptions of your personality and activities, dedicated their lives to these narrations, which are vibrated by you personally and by your pure devotees. Such devotees certainly conquer your lordship, although you are otherwise unconquerable by anyone within the three worlds. So there's a lot in there. I'm not going to go completely into this verse because it's very rich. But what is the implication, of course? Because by this means only you can attain love. You can attain prema. Krishna is only, he responds to that. He responds to service and prayers, but if they're an official, there's an official response. But when he finds someone who is simply loving him intensely, that's what he's really after. Then he responds by coming under the control, if you will. But as Prabhupada makes very clear in the purport, he's only controlled by those who feel completely controlled by Krishna. It's this reciprocal thing. And this is the essence of bhakti. You look up bhakti in the dictionary, and it's a exchange of feeling, an exchange of services. That's why Krishna says, I become the servant of my devotees. And he's already providing us with everything. Right? Even the demons, anyone who's alive, not even human beings, any organism, any living entity, is breathing, is eating, is existing. Because of the mercy of Krishna, he's arranged everything that way, taken the trouble through his expansions, his energies, and so forth. So he's the loving father. But unfortunately, we're the rebellious children who have refused to love him, refused to serve him, and we want to try to be the masters, and so we're given this place for reformatory. Just like you find today, of course it doesn't usually work out so well, but parents have a son usually, who's very rambunctious and rebellious, so they put him in, they have certain camps, which are almost like military, where they train the son, and they kind of try to instill in him, proper mood and everything like that. But it never works. In the material world, it's very imperfect. But that's what this place is. That's what the material world is. It's a reformatory. As is explained, there's two main purposes here. One is to give the living entity a chance to try to enjoy, in senses, and to be repeatedly beaten down. And when you come to the human form of life, there's always some manifestation of Krishna's instructions. If not, himself, his representatives. And if you can't find a representative, the books are there. In other words, he's always making an effort to give us a chance to give up our rebellious attitude and to surrender unto him, to agree to be controlled. And the wonderful thing about it is, if we actually perfect that process and awaken our original pure love for Krishna, then he agrees to become controlled by that love. Perfect example, Madhya Yashoda, right? So he's in the role of this little boy, all attractive, all charming and everything, And her love for him is perfect and unlimited. And he's surrendering, he agrees to be bound up, the famous pastime, and to, be controlled and to be disciplined by him and to be, chastised. And he loves that. That he's drinking in the love. He's tasting that. That is what he's tasting. And if it comes in the form of chastisement for his own good, because he's always worried he's going to, the story. She wanted him to have shoes because there's rocks and there's pebbles and there's all kinds of things on the path out in the forest. So he said, "Why? The cows don't have any shoes. The calves don't have any shoes. You make shoes for all the calves and cows, and I'll have shoes." He says, "Oh, okay, And the gopīs in the rasa dance, that's famous chapter 31, where that prayer is there, the famous one that the Sankirtan devotees are Tava Katamritam Tapta Jivanam. So it's a song of separation. And in that song, there's some very interesting verses, because sometimes they say, Nakala Gopika Nandano Bhavan Nakala Dehinam Antarapantu. We know that you're not actually the son of Yashoda, that you were prayed to by Lord Brahma, you know, and you came down here to save the earth and everything. Nakala Go Nandano Akala Dehinam Antarapantu. Bikani Sarta Vishwagupta Sakhodevan Sattvatam Kule. So you've taken the sattva, you know. So suddenly it's like, well, I thought they didn't know anything about Krishna. But then the next verse or so, they're chastising him. They say, you know very well why we came here. Patisutan Vya Brata Bandavan, Antabalangyatenya Chitagata, Gatibadastavo Gita Mohita, Kita Vayoshita Kastya Jain Shi. You know, they say, we left our husbands, we left our children, you know, bewildered by your flute. You know very well why we came here. Well, who but a cheater like you would leave women in the middle of the night like this? So Krishna is relishing that chastisement. And then, of course, eventually he returns, you know, and they have the rasa dance. So it's a very interesting phenomenon, because in our progression in devotional service, the knowledge is essential. Knowledge is essential. The Bhagavad Gita, you know, chapter 2 is essential. You have to understand, yes, I'm a eternal soul. I'm not this body. And that just being concerned with the impulses of the body is keeping me bound in this world. You have to understand that in order to begin the process of devotional service, of any kind of self-realization. But ultimately, that is not what you're meditating on. That gets you going where you recognize the supremacy of the Lord, and then we want to be conquered by the Lord. You know, we want to surrender, like Arjuna did. Surrendering means, okay, I'm not going to try to figure it out myself. I'm not going to go against your will and argue with you. Just instruct me. So Arjuna is representing us. He's put into illusion so that Krishna can speak the Bhagavad Gita, because he's eternal friend of Krishna. But Krishna becomes conquered. He becomes he's a chariot driver. That's a servant, right? In that way. So this mutual conquering, and this, which is the very first prayer here, is a high realization of what bhakti is all about. Because so the other verse, so that's why I wanted to share the other verse with you, which is also quite famous. And that is, again, this Ambarish. You know, when Ambarish was challenged by Durvasa. And so Durvasa goes nuts, and he creates this kritya to annihilate Ambarish, because he didn't invite him to the breakfast of having, you know, breaking the drinking the water and breaking the fast. So I remember for a long time I thought Durvasa meant he didn't have any clothes. You know, what do I know of Sanskrit? You know, but no, his clothes are far away. No, it means that it's very difficult to live with. And you can see why, because he flies off the handle and everything. You know? So he creates this kritya, which is a female, no offense, female demoness, fiery demoness, to burn Ambarish to ashes. So Ambarish doesn't do anything. He just keeps praying. He's completely surrendered to Krishna, you know. And the chakra comes. Krishna actually put the chakra at his disposal, because he was so surrendered, comes and annihilates that kritya, and then goes after Durvasa. Now, it's very auspicious to be killed by the chakra. Durvasa could have said, yes, my lord. He said, but no. He started running as fast as he could. You know, he goes up to, and he goes to Brahma, he goes to Shiva, and said, please help me, please help me. What can we do? You got the chakra, Krishna's chakra after you. So he goes all the way up to Vaikuntha, and then he meets, and he asks, please help me. And the first thing he says is related exactly to where we are about this. So this is a famous verse that I don't know by heart. Aham bhakta padadino yasvastantra hivadvija sadhubir grasta vidyo bhakta bhakta janapriya. The Supreme Lord said to Durvasa Muni, I am completely under the control of my devotees. Indeed, I am not at all independent. Because my devotees are completely devoid of material desires, I sit only within the cores of their hearts. What to speak of my devotee? Even those who are devotees of my devotees are very dear to me. So this is the same idea. He says, I can't do anything. Of course, what does he eventually tell him to do? Go back down and ask for forgiveness from Ambarish.
And he goes down, he surrenders, and of course Ambarish says, of course, and he requests the chakra to back off. But there's another one here, one more, which is very famous, and this is, I think, near the end of his response. This is text 68. We're in 9th chapter, 4th chapter, 9th canto, 4th chapter, text 68. Sadhavo vidiyam mayam, sadhunam vidiyam toham. Madanyat te na jananti, naham tebhyo managapi. And this is something that we can aspire for. The pure devotee is always within the core of my heart, and I am always in the heart of the pure devotees. My devotees don't know anything else but me, and I don't know anyone else but them. So this is the relationship between Krishna and his pure devotees, is that the devotees are always anxious to serve. Not only serve Krishna, but serve his devotees. That's a very important point. Dasa dasano dasa. Because they know that he's even more pleased with that than direct service. Right? He's more pleased with that when you serve his devotees. And that's why the spiritual master, one of the reasons is so important. And surrendering and serving a spiritual master. Because a real spiritual master means someone who is very dear to Krishna. Because he's representing him. He's taking the trouble to try to deliver more of Krishna's sons and daughters, more of Krishna's children, right? And Srila Prabhupada perfectly exemplified that. That's the definition of acharya. Acharya, very important understanding. 3 elements. He knows the Shastra very thoroughly, abides by the injunctions of the Shastra, and takes the trouble to try to teach it to others, so that they can also enter into it. And as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that no one is more dear to me than he who is preaching my message, taking the austerity and preaching. And that's the basis of this movement. Srila Prabhupada alone basically agreed to take, of Bhaktisiddhanta's disciples, to take the ultimate risk of throwing leaving Vrindavan, where he was nicely situated, and preaching in this language, and there's so much trouble. That's why you have to be not only merciful, but tolerant, preacher. Sadhu, titikshava karunika, sudidak sarvadehinam. This is the description of a sadhu, a great devotee. Why do you have to be tolerant? Because if you're going to be merciful and try to give out the Krishna kindness, you're going to meet so much opposition, right? And sometimes arrested, and Prabhupada always gave the example of Jesus Christ, who was crucified. He had that in the heart, and I'm not going to stop preaching. I'm going to keep going. Prahlad Maharaj, who faced great danger, to preach to his friends and to his father even. So that's now you can see how such activity purchases Krishna. You're willing to undergo all kinds of troubles for the body, even to the point of death, knowing you're not the body, but for his sake, because he loves Krishna so much. And this came up in the last time I did the Vyasa Puja book. Someone wrote this, and I had never known about this quote from Prabhupada, that the real sign of love, the most important sign of love, is you want to see that person's name and fame glorified all over the world. You really want to praise them so that other people will appreciate. Now, this is especially true when knowing that person can so much benefit the person who knows. It's not just your husband or wife or something, but rather that you're anxious that Krishna be glorified and be, worshipped, because it'll please Krishna, and it'll be the best thing for the person who's doing the worshiping. So that's really the essence of this movement. Lord Chaitanya showed how he took so much trouble. He was nicely situated in Navadvip. I've been reading this Chaitanya Mangal. People read the Chaitanya Mangal? It's it's a series of songs by Lochan Das Thakur, and they're very famous in Bengal, I've heard. And all of them are describing Lord Chaitanya's ecstatic life in Navadvip, in the Adi Leela and the Madhya Leela mostly, and then he takes sannyas. I haven't read the last part yet. But it's very much, his taking of sannyas was really traumatic. There's a lot more description of it than we find in the CC, of the effect on Sachi Devi and especially Vishnu Priya, and all the devotees. They were distraught that he was leaving them. Just like the gopīs, when Krishna left Vrindavan. But ultimately, he did do that. He left, and gave for the benefit of the whole world. You know, first in India, but he made a very important prediction that his name would be sung in every town and village all over the world. And that prediction, along with Bhaktisiddhanta's order as the primary thing, to preach in English and preach abroad, impelled Prabhupada to leave. And you know, at age 69, his health wasn't that great, you know, with no money, no followers. Can you imagine? I'm going to India. I have no idea what will happen when I land, and I have no money when I get there. Does anyone ever do that? No. You make sure someone's there to pick you up. You have enough, you know, money to buy. Make sure you get your ticket, and you can sustain yourself there. And Prabhupada took all risks that Krishna would maintain, and he proved that it worked. Yeah, it was difficult for a whole year. Practically, it was going here and there, you know, but he didn't compromise. All of these uptown swamis, you know, they told him. I saw one of those uptown swamis, believe it or not. Nikalananda Prabhu, Hare Krishna. He was with the Ramakrishna mission. And when I saw him, he had already had a stroke, so he couldn't speak. And they invited me, because I was getting close to them. I had bought the Sharirika Bhashya. It was translated by Nikalananda, but I never read it. Thank God. I started chanting Hare Krishna. But anyway, so I would go to the lunch. They invited me to the lunch. You know, if you're in the inside group, they really wanted, you know, like a young, quote, intelligent man. They didn't have so many of those, so they invited me. I went up there, and he couldn't speak, but he was there sitting in a suit coat, you know, and one lady was helping him to eat the lunch, you know. Anyway, I won't get into details. But he met Prabhupada, and, you know, years before this, and he, you know, and he advised him, give up the clothes, give up the regulations, you know, if you're going to preach in America. Prabhupada never could compromise that. You know, that was unique. And he never had some horrible, you know, relation with the disciples, because if you don't get the higher taste, what are you going to do? You've got all this influence, you got all this money, you know, and you're not getting the higher taste. Of course you're going to get, you know, drawn into that. It's crazy. So Srila Prabhupada showed how he was completely controlled by Krishna, completely surrendered to Krishna. But he got so much, you know, what could I say, intervention, you know, obvious transcendental help from Krishna in the preaching mission. You know, and it's just miraculous, really, what he did. All those temples and all those devotees in a few years, and the books, you know, producing the books. That was nothing, getting up at 12 every night, you know. It's amazing. So this is Chitraketu is become very purified, and he is understanding this. You notice every line. There's 4 times the word Jita appears in here, doesn't it? I think every line has the word Jita and Ajita, Vijitas. So that conquering, we are, you know, at this point we should really want to be conquered at every level by Krishna. And you know, and Krishna will reciprocate on his own time in his own way. But we're assured that is the most intimate relationship. You're completely conquered by Krishna, meaning that you take pleasure only in giving pleasure to Krishna. This is Jiva Goswami's definition of pure devotion. It's also Rupa Goswami's. Anya abhilashita shunyam. Well, I think it was quoted in the purport here. Being completely devoid of other desires, which will cover your bhakti. Anya abhilasha, jnana, karma, anavritam. Avritam means to cover. Not covered by a desire for liberation, not for the material desire, this and that, but simply desire to find out what does Krishna want, and try to, you know, from your spiritual master and the Shastra and other superiors, and to try your hardest to do that, to achieve that. And in that way, everything opens up, and you find Krishna making arrangements, you know, for your advancement in devotional service. That this whole movement is an arrangement, because you know, people, there was a ferment, there were devotees, potential devotees all over the world, and so this movement is designed to do that. Okay, I'm going to stop there. If there's any discussion on these points, being conquered by Krishna and conquering Krishna. Govardhan Prabhu.
Thank you, Dravida Prabhu. you know how you mentioned Srila Prabhupada's struggle coming to the U.S.?
Yeah.
I remember I was distributing books in La Jolla, and there was this lady, she came to my table. And I displayed all the other books that I had. And I had one of the Prabhupada Messenger of the Supreme Lord. And asked her, what do you do? And she said, I'm a writer. So I said, oh, okay. And then she pointed at that book, and she said, can you tell me about this? So I was explaining to her all the difficulties and hardships that Srila Prabhupada went through, you know. And I told her, after a few years, he established temples, you know, he wrote so many books, translated. And she got really emotional, because I guess she understood the, you know, the difficulties of writing a book. Yeah. Right. And then how Srila Prabhupada was alone, and he came to the West, and so it touched her heart. And then she took the book.
That appreciation itself is very valuable, you know, obviously. That's quite a story. Thank you. Go ahead.
I had just something here about Lokanath Swami, the Bhakti Sundara Swami sends out. Yeah.
Okay.
Lokanath wanted very much to be able to worship the deity form of the Lord, and Sri Krishna, who is within the heart of everyone, thus presented a deity form of himself to Lokanath Swami to worship. This deity's name is Radha Vinod. Having received this deity, Lokanath looked up to see who had brought him. But seeing no one present, he began to reflect on the mystery of his appearance. Seeing Lokanath deep in thought, Radha Vinod laughed and said, who would have brought me here? I have come myself. I live here on the banks of the Kishori Kūn, and this is my village, Umrao. Now please, give me something to eat. Lokanath Swami was beside himself with bliss, and being immersed in that ecstasy, he prepared some foodstuffs and offered them to Radha Vinod. Then he made a bed of flowers and made the deity lie down to take rest. He fanned the deity with some leaves and meditated on massaging the lotus feet of his Lord. Having surrendered his body, mind, and very life itself, he was totally absorbed, as though drinking a flow of honey-like nectar.
It's interesting that, you know, we sing this song by Narottam Das, and he's a disciple. He was the only disciple of Lokanath Swami. You know, it describes in our little reading how he performed all this menial service for a whole year, you know, cleaning up his, you know, where he passed and everything. And Lokanath finally agreed to be his guru. His only disciple was Narottam Das Thakur. Oh, I didn't know that. Yeah, that Krishna appeared in the dream of Lokanath Swami Goswami to initiate him, but it still took a whole year. He was still reluctant. How humble he was. We have, you know, the thing is, this is, you know, how important association is. It's all important. Well, these, you know, these biographies and these days, this is how we can associate with these great associates of Lord Chaitanya, great servants, and you get special mercy on these days. You know, you can pray directly to them. There's nothing material about it. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol.